Few books about race and justice in our time have had an impact like that of Harper Lee's novel To Kill a Mockingbird, published more than 50 years ago, a story, of course, of prejudice in the American Deep South. A notable stage adaptation is about to come to London, written by Aaron Sorkin, the author of the West Wing TV series and so many films. So why was he interested in that story of Atticus Finch, the small-town lawyer defending Tom Robinson, a black man accused of rape? Well, Aaron Sorkin has been talking to our special correspondent James Naughty about that and, of course, modern American politics.
My first draft was terrible. I was simply trying to gently swaddle the book in bubble wrap and transfer it to a stage and kind of get out of its way. But it read like it was a greatest hits album done by a cover band. And pretty quickly, I was able to see specifically what I wanted it to be, what some of the challenges were. One of them was this, that Atticus in a play can't be the same person at the end of the play that he is at the beginning of the play. And I wondered, how did Harper Lee get away with having an Atticus who's the same at the end of the book as he is at the beginning of the book? And the answer is that Atticus is not the protagonist in either the book or the film. Scout is.
Scout, the daughter, who of course tells the story, and you've taken that a stage further in the play.
Yes. Scout, her brother Jem, and their friend Dill, they narrate the story. They go back and forth between the people they became as adults and the people they were as children. They address the audience directly, but it was Atticus that was going to be the big challenge. For him to be a proper protagonist, he was going to need a flaw, and he was going to have to change in the course of the play. So how was he going to change? Was he going to be a bad father who became a good father? No. A bad lawyer who became a good lawyer? No. A racist who then believed in equality and justice? No. And I realized, going back to the book, I didn't have to invent a flaw for Atticus. Harper Lee had given him one. It's just that when we all learned the book in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, we thought it was a virtue. And it's this. Atticus believes that goodness can be found in anyone. All you have to do is, as he says, crawl around in their skin for a while. He excuses the worst people in this small town of Macomb. He excuses Bob Ewell, who is a hardcore racist. Throughout the events of the play, he comes to realize that he didn't know his neighbors as well as he thought he did, that this problem has taken deeper, stronger roots than he ever imagined it had.
And of course, for an audience in the 21st century in the United States, with all that's happened in the last half century and more since the book was written, the perspective has changed, the understanding has changed. One of the things that happened, of course, was that partly because you had given Tom, the man who's falsely accused of rape, a voice, there was an argument with the Harper Lee estate about changing. Now, that was all settled. But it's an interesting insight into the way things have changed in the period, isn't it?
It is. After I wrote my terrible first draft, I threw it out, and I sort of vowed to approach this differently in two ways. One, I wasn't going to try to do a Harper Lee impersonation. I was going to write the way I write. And two, I wasn't going to pretend that I was writing the play in 1960. I am writing it today about a time in the past. I don't want this to be, and it isn't an exercise in nostalgia. It's not a trip to the museum. I think that people who come to the play, I think they will embrace their memories of the book and of Gregory Peck and the film, but I think that they're going to be surprised by what happens when they're in the theater. It is very much about us today.
I suppose some people outside the United States thought with the election of Barack Obama, racial politics would quickly become a thing of the past. I talked to a former presidential candidate who said, look, this remains the original sin, and it has not yet been expiated. And that's the truth behind this story, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly right. There are many people who felt like, the civil rights movement began in the late 1950s and ended with the election of Barack Obama, mission accomplished. When in fact, we were being like Atticus, who thinks he knows his friends and neighbors, but really doesn't. In fact, it was the election of Barack Obama that was kind of the last straw for many people.
What you were saying is Donald Trump was the payback.
Exactly right. People try to figure out how this happened, how we elected just such a plainly unqualified dolt. I am convinced that it is simply that Donald Trump is an excellent stick with which to poke liberals in the eye.
The West Wing, which you wrote, aired for the first time 20 years ago this autumn.
Yeah.
And it presented a picture of what went on in President Bartlett's house in the West Wing. Can you imagine what's going on in the West Wing now?
I have a prediction, which is that you're never going to see Donald Trump as a character on screen or on stage. He'll always be off stage. He'll always be off screen. And the reason why is that whether it's a hero or an anti-hero, a protagonist or an antagonist, there is no such thing as an interesting character who has no conscience. You can't do anything with the character. So he's always going to have to be off screen. So you're not going to get a Richard III moment, a Richard Nixon moment. So can I imagine what's going on in the White House? Yeah, he's ranting and raving about something. He's being incoherent. He is not listening. He is not having any kind of attention span. He's eating something from McDonald's and he's rage tweeting. That's not a character you can write. It's a character you can write. It's not a character audiences are going to be interested in.
Aaron Sorkin, thank you very much indeed.